I never imagined that the blind girl they bullied was actually a beautiful billionaire. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The sun was blazing, but the chill of dread settled in my bones. I could barely breathe, my heart pounding like a war drum. There was Claire, standing still, her fragile umbrella of defiance unfurling against the jeers. She was blind. A shadow among the crowd, yet her presence was magnetic. I'd seen the way they picked on her, shoving her into lockers like she was trash. I'd swallowed my anger, too scared to intervene, too lost in my own insecurities. Who was I to stand up when I felt so small? But then, something weird happened that day. They knocked her white cane from her hands, laughter echoing around like thunder. That sound, pure cruelty, shattered the silence of our uneventful high school life. Claire stood there, trembling, but I caught a glimpse of something different. Her smile wasn't for them. It was a secret she held tight. Days passed, and I couldn't shake the image from my mind. Claire, the girl with the spark, was isolated, drifting behind the walls of our mundane school. Her neglected voice whispering stories of dreams, one leg at a time, toward the world unseen. I knew something was off. I felt it in my gut. Everyone assumed she was poor, a victim of fate. But pieces of a puzzle seemed to click. The briefcase I spotted in her locker, the designer shoes that peeked from beneath her frayed jeans. Who was she really? I found myself wrestling with an unexpected curiosity. No one else was looking deeper. They were too blinded by their own ignorance. Then one afternoon, I caught a glimpse of that darkness again. Claire was standing at the corner of the street, hands clutching her cane like it was a lifeline. The street lamps flickered, and for a moment, everything felt like a dream. I swear, I felt a pulse of energy radiating from her still frame. Was she waiting for something? Or someone? And just like that, a black limousine pulled up beside her. My heart skipped a beat. I ducked behind a tree, breath caught in my throat. The door opened with a quiet whoosh. A tall figure stepped out, shadows dancing in the light. Was I dreaming? My heart raced. Was this her true world? Did she escape into a high-rise palace when the bell rang? Was there more to Claire than this fragile girl everyone dismissed? A million thoughts spiraled in my mind as they shared a brief conversation. Was she really a billionaire? I couldn't breathe. Suddenly she laughed, soft yet powerful. It echoed in the air, wrapping around me, sending chills down my spine. It was a laugh full of secrets, of hidden strength that dared to defy the world that wronged her. And then it hit me like a freight train. Could I be friends with someone so extraordinary? Did I matter in her realm? The fear of rejection clawed at my insides. A part of me wanted to run, to hide, but another part stood rooted to the spot, heart thundering like a drumroll of destiny. As I watched, the moment stretched, the atmosphere thick with eerie anticipation. I was on the edge of something monumental, a secret about to spill forth like a thunderstorm. And then the door swung shut. The limousine drove away, leaving behind a swirl of unanswered questions drifting through the air. What was Claire hiding? Why hadn't she said a word? My hands trembled with confusion mixed with excitement as I slowly began to piece together my next move. What lay beneath the surface? The truth was just beyond my reach. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The days following that moment felt like an endless blur, a whirlpool of questions swirling around my mind. What was I supposed to do now? The image of Claire's serene face, her gentle laughter lingering in the air, haunted me. The dichotomy of her existence unfolded before me like a movie I had no script for, a jarring contrast between the world perceiving her as weak and the powerful force she held within. That evening, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mulling over the realities and fantasies locked in my mind. I wanted to know her. The real her. I needed to unravel the mystery wrapped in the enigma. But how? My gut twisted at the thought. Would she even want me in her life? The very thought felt selfish, piano keys of self-doubt playing a melancholic tune. As if the universe sensed my turmoil, the next day pushed me toward another encounter with Claire. I was trudging through another monotonous lunch period, deliberating whether to take a seat at the corner table, or the one flooded with laughter when I spotted her. Claire was sitting alone under the large oak tree, the sun casting a golden halo around her, her cane resting gently beside her. It was in that fleeting moment, as she tilted her head back, listening intently to the whisper of the wind, that something shifted inside me. I noticed the way her lips parted as if addressing the world that dared to dismiss her. A swell of admiration rose within me. Was it too much to hope, too out of reach to believe that she might want to be my friend? Before I could talk myself out of it, I wavered forward, purpose igniting my steps. "Hey, Claire!" My voice was barely a whisper against the rustling leaves, but she turned towards me, those dark eyes gleaming with curiosity. "Hello?" she responded, a soft smile touching her lips. I sat down carefully, not entirely sure of our unspoken agreement. We remained there for a moment, silence wrapping around us like a protective cocoon. "I saw you the other day," I ventured cautiously, curiosity prickling my skin. At the corner a moment of hesitation painted her features, but then her laugh returned, breaking through the trepidation like sunlight. "That happens sometimes," she said, her tone whimsical. "Just a trick of fate, I suppose." Yet the revelation sparked a flicker of something deeper in her gaze, something I craved to understand fully. "People bully you, right?" The words spilled out before I could tether them down. Why don't I just tell them who I am?" She interrupted gently, the wind tugging at her hair, mixing observation with an unmistakable challenge. I nodded, my heart thudding. "Yes. What's stopping you? You shouldn't have to be hidden." Her expression softened, yet a shadow clouded her features. "I live in a world where visibility is a double-edged sword," she said. "Sometimes it's safer this way. People, they don't always see who you truly are, even when you show them." Her words hung heavily in the air, palpable as the shadows that danced around us. We were two souls, exposed yet shielded by invisible barriers, hers forged from pain, mine from insecurity. What did that mean? A surge of frustration made me want to reach out and show her the strength I glimpsed in those moments, the spirit that flickered within her. Just as the conversation began to evolve, a figure approached, a silhouette emerging from the dappled sunlight. Claire's expression shifted. A sudden vulnerability sparkled in her eyes as she recognized him. The tall man I had seen with her before stepped into the frame. My instincts screamed trouble, a cold torrent running down my spine. "Claire, there you are. I was looking for you." His voice was smooth but laced with an unsettling urgency. My gut twisted. Who was this man? The easy camaraderie I had felt just moments before hardened, replaced by an instinct to shield her. "I am busy," she replied, almost as if she were trying to blend into the ground, her body tensing. But the man stepped closer, dismissing me with a glance. "You need to come home. There are things we need to discuss," he insisted, reaching toward her as if wrestling her away from my presence. "No!" Claire's voice cut through the air, sharp and fierce, a ripple of empowerment breaking through her previous indecision. "I can't, not now. I'm talking." I watched, my throat tightening, as disbelief swept over her delicate features. This was the moment of confrontation I had feared. The dynamic between them engulfed me in confusion. Who did he think he was? Coming here to take her away? "Claire." His tone softened, but I felt an undertone of menace, a darkness hidden behind polite words. "This is not a game. You can't keep pretending. You need to fulfill your obligations." Obligations? The term struck like a hammer against glass, shattering something fragile inside me, leaving me breathless in its aftermath. What was unfolding before my eyes? The hope that had bloomed with our budding connection now withered, replaced with dread. The storm I thought might break held no promise of fulfillment, only potential devastation. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she glanced at me, a whirlwind of confusion reflected in her gaze. "Leave me alone." "I'm done." The tension hung heavy in the air, electric and palpable. I sat frozen as the confrontation escalated. The world around us dimmed, my pulse quickening, the taste of urgency flooding my senses. Who was I to step into her turmoil? As the man reached out again, Claire grasped her cane tightly, her resolve wrapping around her like iron armor. But just as I opened my mouth, ready to defend her, something snapped within me. "Leave her alone." The words erupted from my throat unexpectedly as a surge of protective fervor overcame me. I stood, rooted next to Claire, our fates entwined in a battle I hadn't anticipated. In that moment, astonishment painted the man's face, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw respect flash through Claire's expression, a bond forged from adversity. But as anger flashed across the man's face, so did the realization that it might not just be Claire who was about to be swept away by a stronger tide. Because even in my gut, I felt the ominous shift. Something deeper was lurking beneath the surface, swirling like the storm around us. What awaited us? Would I have the courage to stand by her side as this tale spun further out of control? And more hauntingly, what consequences would our defiance stir? The aftermath of my defiant shout echoed around us, a jarring intruder in the heavy silence that followed. Claire's eyes widened, uncertainty mingling with a flicker of hope, while the man's face twisted into an expression I had never witnessed before, an uncomfortable blend of disbelief and simmering rage. "Who do you think you are?" he spat, dismissing me entirely as if I were an obstacle barely worthy of his contempt. The contemptuous words slithered through the air, wrapping around Claire, who wavered as if testing the ground beneath her. My heart raced as adrenaline coursed through me. This was no mere confrontation. It felt like I had stumbled onto the precipice of something much larger, an invisible struggle that could engulf us both. "Claire, you don't have to listen to him," I said, my voice faltering yet persistent. Desperation clung to every word like a lifeline, and I instinctively took a step closer to her, ready to shield her if need be. But the man redirected his ire towards me, his eyes narrowing. "I suggest you walk away before this gets messy," he warned, his calm demeanor belied by the threat simmering beneath the surface. Claire's grip on her cane tightened, her knuckles white. "I can stand up for myself," she declared, a hint of steel threading through her voice. In that instant, her fragility melted away, replaced by a fierceness that invited admiration. The tension peaked, a taut string ready to snap. "I'm not your possession," she continued, a defiance blooming in the very air we were breathing. For a fleeting heartbeat, everything felt possible. The wind stirred around us, carrying the weight of her words like an anthem of resilience. But before I could hope too much, the man leaned closer, a shadow darkening his features, whispering too low for me to hear but harsh enough to send a shiver down my spine. "Claire, I won't let you throw everything away for a moment of rebellion." Her face faltered, trapped between the desire to forge her own path and the weight of expectation smothering her spirit. A turmoil swirled behind those beautiful, deep eyes, a haunting familiarity of being held hostage by one's past. I felt completely powerless, as if the very ground I stood on had turned to quicksand, and with it, our budding connection threatened to dissolve. There was so much I wanted to understand, so many layers beneath the girl who smiled so easily beneath that oak tree. Yet here we were, faced with a terrifying reality, adrift in a struggle far beyond mere friendship. "Claire, talk to me," I said softly, aware that the fire of confrontation could just as easily ignite into chaos. "You can trust me." Her lips parted, a promise hobbled by fear. Just then, a crowd gathered at the edge of the lawn, a random collection of curious students drawn by the tension radiating between the three of us. I felt their eyes boring into our little epicenter, judging, whispering. Some grinned while others appeared confused. The spotlight of attention felt blinding, and I worried it would only exacerbate the situation. "Let's go," the man said, offering a last dissenting glance at Claire before slowly retreating as if granting her a choice, yet every slender line of his posture screamed control. "But remember, the door is always open, Claire." A moment hung stilled, a fragile breath drawn between us, until he finally turned away, the noise of the crowd swallowing him whole. Claire's shoulders sagged, and suddenly it was as if the air had been sucked from the landscape. I remained frozen by her side, the silence punctuated only by the fading echoes of chaos around us. Then it happened, a soft touch, a tentative warmth, as Claire's fingers grazed mine. "Thank you," she whispered, and in that moment, the universe aligned, fates intertwined in ways my heart yearned to explore. But deep inside her gaze, I saw uncertainty and fear intertwining like tightly woven strands, a burden of something greater, darker than I could comprehend. "But this isn't over," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, as if embracing the very weight of her truth. As her courage flickered, a fresh wave of anxiety surged within me, an unspoken understanding filled the void. "You're not in this alone," I reassured her, my heart pounding ferociously in my chest. Just then, a sudden shout rang through the air, piercing the fragile calm. "Claire!" A voice boomed from the far side of the lawn. I turned to find another man approaching, flanked by several others in suits, a wholly different aura radiating from him: authority, demand, urgency. My stomach dropped. Who were these new intruders? My protective instincts flared to life, but before I could act, Claire staggered back, her expression blanched, every trace of color draining as recognition flickered in her eyes. "Not again," she murmured. All hope twisted into apprehension as the man in the suit locked eyes with her, a commanding presence that resonated with more implications than I could grasp. Panic flickered across her features, silence crashing over us once more like a tidal wave. As I stood there, fear crawling through my chest, chipping away at the hope we had finally begun to build, I understood that this was only the beginning. The relentless storm ahead threatened to unravel everything we had yet to discover, and at that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that Claire's world harbored secrets darker than either of us had dared to imagine. The crowd had receded like a tide drawn back from the shore, leaving only silence woven with unspoken words and heavy uncertainty. The man in the suit advanced, each step echoing ominously through the void around us. Claire, rooted in place, seemed to shrink in on herself, and for a moment, all I could do was watch her wrestle with the impending storm that threatened to engulf her. "Claire, we need to go," the man commanded, his voice steeped in authority, each syllable punctuated with expectation. Now, beneath his polished exterior lay a menacing edge that churned the pit of my stomach. I searched Claire's face for answers, a map to navigate through this murky labyrinth of her reality. "Who are they?" I whispered, afraid even the air might betray us. But her gaze was lost, anchored somewhere between the past and present, as disoriented as a ship caught in a tempest. "There, they want to take me home," she managed, the words laced with a reluctance that gnawed at my heart. A home that might not feel like one at all. The man in the suit leaned closer, his voice lowering as if inviting a more personal confession. "You know what happens if you don't come back with us, Claire. This is bigger than your stubbornness." Claire cringed at the harshness of his words, the weight of intimate threats muffling her spirit, and I felt an anger flare within me, raw and pulsating. "She isn't a piece of property to be commandeered," I spoke up, my voice trembling yet resolute. "She deserves to choose for herself." The man turned to me slowly, contempt tainting his eyes as if I were a mere gnat buzzing around his head. "You're a distraction she can't afford," he retorted, dismissing my protest with a wave of his hand. "This is not your concern, young man." But it was my concern now. I could see it in the way Claire's lashes fluttered, the flicker of indecision battling against the dread. "Claire," I said, desperation prickling my tone, "please. You're not alone in this. You don't have to go with him." With every word, I hoped to coax out the strength I believed rested quietly inside her, yet she seemed frayed at the edges, the unyielding chain of her past clawing back to consume her. For a fleeting moment, our eyes locked, and I was struck by a vision of all the possibilities we could still explore. But that connection was splintered as her uncertain gaze flickered back to the man, who was now surveying me with a mix of amusement and disdain. A slow smile crept across his lips, taunting, as if to say the game was well and truly over. "Enough, Claire," he pressed, his voice draped in condescension. "Your decisions have consequences and you know what follows when you defy them. Don't let them intimidate you, I urged, feeling a fire ignite within me, an ember of rebellion sparked by the way her spirit flickered like a flame against the swirling winds of fear. You're stronger than this. You can fight for what you want. But her voice was barely a whisper as she murmured, what if what I want could put you in danger? The raw vulnerability in her eyes disarmed me, a chasm of reality opening wide beneath our feet. I reached for her hand instinctively, the warmth of her touched skin igniting a deeper connection. Then we'll face it together, I asserted, offering her every ounce of conviction I possessed, hoping to breathe life into the flickering hope that still lingered between us. From the edges of the lawn, shadows danced, murmurs swirled, the spectators were becoming a storm of their own, a curious audience peering into the unraveling of something precious. But in this moment, I only had Claire, the quiet girl with unyielding spirit buried just beneath the surface. She hesitated, a glimmer of burgeoning resolve sparking in the depths of her gaze. The suit-clad figure interjected, enough of this. Claire, your compliance is not optional. The urgency in his voice reached a crescendo, forcing everyone to tense like a drawn bowstring. Sensing her breaking point, I held her gaze, inviting her to take a leap of faith into the unknown with me. And in the midst of desperation, it felt as if time halted for a heartbeat, the air thickening with expectation. Please, Claire. Just as it seemed our connection could reshape the moment, the man in the suit suddenly stepped forward, unfurling a document from his Coata photo. Look very carefully, he instructed, holding it up. Don't you recognize her? Confusion clouded Claire's features, followed by recognition, and her breath hitched in horror as she took in the visage on that glossy paper. The inner turmoil poured through her gaze, a torrent of emotions dancing their fear, betrayal, and an inkling of longing. I leaned closer, desperate to hold her steady, but my voice faded amid the backdrop of chaos. I felt the ground quake beneath me, not from the physical reality but from the seismic shift of everything I thought I knew. In that suffocating moment, the answer I never anticipated whispered through the silence, unraveling our fragile tether in ways I dared not predict. Claire, no. Who is she? I demanded softly, but the tension curled ominously around us, whispering doubts that threatened to spill into the abyss. As the world around us faded into muted shadows, Claire's fearful gaze met mine, and I realized our fragile hopes were hanging by the thinnest thread, dangling precariously as a horror I had not yet fathomed loomed larger than life. The weight of the photograph seemed to hang in the air, a pulsating moment that threatened to unravel not only Claire's reality, but also the fragile foundations of our burgeoning connection. I felt the heat of her fear radiating off her skin, and I could see her trembling hands wrap around mine, seeking solace but finding only a tumultuous storm. The man in the suit seemed to revel in her turmoil. This is your sister, Claire. She's been searching for you. And you've hidden yourself away. But isn't it time to come back home? He lowered the photo slightly, watching as the light danced across Claire's face, illuminating the turmoil etched in her features, pulled between two worlds. Get away from her! I shouted, feeling my heart race in defiance of the looming threat. Each syllable felt like a dagger aimed at the man's impassive mien, a desperate attempt to reclaim our moment from the clutches of his manipulation. Claire's wide-eyed gaze darted back to the photograph, and a shudder permeated her body as the truth settled like thick fog. No, she murmured, shaking her head as if the very act could banish the reality before us. I don't have a sister, not anymore, don't you see? She's alive, Claire. And she's been waiting for you, he pressed, unfazed by her pain. You're the only one who can bring her home. A flicker of recognition scuttled across her face, morphing into shadows of doubt. Why would she want me back? Why would she? Because your family, he interrupted, the words like barbs, digging deeper into the jagged edges of Claire's mind. And she believes you can fix what's broken. Isn't that right? For the first time, the anger that had been simmering within Claire's heart crackled to life. You don't know anything about me or my life, she exclaimed, the vehemence flaring, shattering the chains of uncertainty that bound her. You don't know what I've lost. The intensity of her voice surprised even me. Anger and despair meshed into something forceful, a storm rising inside her that had laid dormant for too long. I squeezed her hand tighter, sending waves of strength down our entwined fingers. "You don't have to do this," I repeated, searching her eyes for the flicker of resilience I knew dwelled within. "You have your own journey." But doubt lingered like an unwanted guest, and I could see the internal struggle reflected in her gaze, a battle between familial ties and the desire for autonomy that had pinched her existence. The man was right about one thing: she was capable of bringing light back to the darkness. But was it worth the price? From behind me, voices began to rise again. Spectators in the distance were whispering, their eyes locked onto our emotional standoff, feeding off the escalating tension. I could hear snippets of conversation, fueled by curiosity, immersed in intrigue and speculation. It felt surreal, this very private battle drawn into an arena as public as a stage, where every heartbeat was echoed by 100 hushed breaths. "Maybe she doesn't deserve to be found," Claire's voice wavered, but there was a flicker of defiance burning beneath her despair. "Maybe she'd rather I stay lost." A new flicker of hope danced in my chest. "Those words can't come from your heart, Claire. You're not lost. You've just had to fight to be seen. That's never a wasted journey." Her gaze snapped back to mine, unfurling the burgeoning resolve that shimmered just under her skin. But as I spoke, a new voice emerged from the crowd, commanding and rich, a woman with an undeniable presence that even eclipsed the chaos around us. "Claire! Is that really you?" The voice echoed, an unexpected warmth slicing through the tension. There she was, standing just beyond the threshold of our confrontation, poised and radiant, her long hair cascading like a waterfall around a face that was achingly familiar. I didn't have to see the photograph to know who she was. It was as if the very universe had conspired to orchestrate this moment, drawing Claire's sister into the fray like a comet in the night sky. Emotion twisted in my gut as I glanced at Claire, whose eyes had glazed over, trapped between wonder and fear. "Claire, it's me. I've finally found you," the woman said, extending her hand, bridging the distance with vulnerability that held power still unknown. But Claire remained rooted, shock rendering her immobile, the world around her receding into a blur. Conflict etched deeper into her features, and I sensed we were on the precipice of an irreversible choice. "Claire, please," I whispered, as unity shifted with the arrival of her sister, lending gravity to a decision she had to make. "Remember who you are, and remember I'm here." Yet even as I spoke, uncertainty had woven a new spell around us. Would she take the leap towards a sister she scarcely knew, or would she turn back toward the uncertain path we had just begun to carve together? In that fleeting moment of her hesitation, I sensed the dimensions of their history buried beneath layers of longing and heartbreak, a narrative I yearned to understand. But I feared there was no time left for that discovery, for Claire's truth dangled precariously above the abyss. The shadows in her sister's eyes cut through the haze of confusion stretching wide. "Claire! Please!" And in that fractured moment, with everything we fought for hanging in the balance, Claire stepped forward, torn between memories unspoken and a future unclaimed. My heart raced, game-playing scenarios of what could happen next, uncertain if I was ready for what awaited us. "Claire!" I breathed, and as her name left my lips, I understood, hope and fear could not coexist forever. A choice was dawning, potent and irreversible. And no matter the outcome, it would alter everything we had become, and everything we hoped to be. Claire's heart thundered in her chest as she stood before her sister, a living testament to the past she had buried deep within herself. It was as if the fabric of her existence had been unraveled by a gentle tug, exposing layers of grief, confusion, and a remnant of an unvoiced longing that whispered in the quiet moments of her solitude. The air was heavy with anticipation, but the push and pull of yearning and fear made her feel like she was standing at the edge of a great chasm. "Claire, please," her sister implored, desperation lacing her voice like a soft melody that filtered through her tumultuous thoughts. Yet the words had a strange, musical resonance, something that attached itself to the vault of emotions stored in Claire's heart, evoking a surging tide of memories she hadn't expected to surface. In that moment, she was a child again, running down the dimly lit hallways of a home cut short by silence, where laughter turned to murmurs and things left unsaid brooded in the shadows. Her memories flickered like a film reel, moments of warmth intertwined with betrayal and abandonment. The echo of her sister's laughter, once so vibrant, had been muffled by time, waiting patiently behind a wall of shared grief veiled in years of unresolved tension. Why now? Claire's voice broke through the heavy silence, her question echoing the resounding dissonance between them. Why didn't you come for me before? I needed you. Tears brimming in her sister's eyes mirrored Claire's own, forming a fragile bridge that stirred something deep within. I tried, Claire. I really did. Every single day, she confessed, her voice trembling as vulnerability seeped into their fractured connection. After everything happened, I thought it was for the best to keep my distance. I thought you wanted that. I thought you thought wrong. Claire felt the sting of raw emotion clawing at her throat. But as her anger bubbled forth, so did the volatile mix of more profound feelings: regret, sorrow, and an unexpected flicker of hope. Her sister hadn't abandoned her. She had been trapped in a cage of their shared history, just as Claire had. Suddenly, the buzzing crowd became an echoing void, as if time suspended itself in that infinitesimal moment. I watched Claire wrestle with the tempest inside her. She was teetering on the cusp of a revelation, one that could connect her past to the present in a way that could well bend the trajectory of her future. Then, against the backdrop of despair, a surprise nudged through the tension. A small child, no older than 6, emerged from the crowd. The little girl, with sun-kissed curls and a beaming smile, clutched a vibrant bouquet of wildflowers, their colors a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere surrounding us. She approached Claire with innocence, her eyes sparkling with joy unmarred by life's complexities. Mama says these are for you. The child extended the flowers, a bouquet vibrant and beautiful, reminiscent of the warmth of spring after a long winter. Despite the shadows consuming us, her presence shone like dawn breaking through the darkest night. Claire looked down, her hardened heart softening momentarily, the charm of childhood touching the edges of her soul. Tears brimmed in Claire's eyes anew, but this time, they felt lighter, a release of pain transformed into something sweeter, something reminiscent of hope anchored in responsibility. Thank you, Claire whispered, managing a small smile as she accepted the blooms. Their fragrance sent a balm to her aching spirit. But the moment was fleeting. Claire's attention flickered back to her sister, caught once more in a storm of conflicting emotions. This is your chance to walk away, isn't it? She said, struggling for composure. All those years you left me. Were you waiting for a moment like this to come back and claim what you think you deserve? No. It's not like that. I lost everything too, Claire. Her sister's voice cracked, raw and imploring. Every day without you was a reminder of what I couldn't fix. There isn't a place in my heart that isn't haunted by your absence. Something shifted. Dramatically within Claire, the threads of resentment began to unravel, blending into a vast array of emotions that demanded resolution. Then, let's start by fixing this together, Claire ventured. But before Claire could process her own words, a chill swept through the atmosphere as suddenly, the man in the suit interjected, the smirk he wore now replaced by an unsettling seriousness. You think this is merely a reunion? Claire, it's much more. Secrets, buried truths, and lies threaten to tear you apart. Are you prepared to face the fallout? The atmosphere thickened, the sweet fragrance of wildflowers tainted with fear. My pulse quickened, the warning in his voice reverberating like a drumbeat, sending ripples of tension throughout the crowd. Claire turned towards him, shaking her head in disbelief, but a dawning realization crept in. What was presented as a moment of reunion potentially morphed into a harbinger of an even darker truth. She glanced back at her sister, searching for answers, yet seeing only the haunted look in her eyes. What does he mean? Claire's voice trembled, the buoyancy of hope waning. What secrets can possibly lie between us? And in that moment, as shadows loomed larger and truth became an elusive stranger, Claire realized some choices, once made, could never be taken back. Tension crackled between the sisters, forging a bond even as fear fluttered like a caged bird within them. The reckoning had only just begun, and they were not prepared for the revelations or consequences that loomed ahead, threatening the fragile footing they'd barely managed to establish. As the air thickened, and our collective breaths caught in anticipation, we found ourselves teetering on the edge of something formidable, the echoes of our choices reverberating louder than the heartbeat of hope. The atmosphere hummed with electricity, an unshakable tension gripping Claire as she struggled to process the whirlwind of emotions swirling within her. The buried truths referenced by the man in the suit weighed heavily, their presence as oppressive as a storm cloud ready to burst. What secrets can possibly lie between us? Claire's voice trembled, every syllable laced with both defiance and a desperate need to understand. Her sister hesitated, the fissures of their relationship crackling under the weight of unspoken burdens. "I don't know what he knows," she finally whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "But there is so much more to our story than you understand. To deserve to know," Claire interrupted, her heart pounding in her chest, a frenzied drumbeat of urgency and fear. "All these years, I was left in the dark. I have fought through the pain of losing you, and now I find that there could be even more pain lurking beneath the surface. Tell me the truth, please." The pleading in her voice hung heavy between them, each sister searching the other's eyes for redemption and truth. Yet the fragile hope that had resettled over them began to crack under the pressure of doubt. The little girl with the wildflowers had retreated back into the crowd, a fleeting reminder of innocence that seemed worlds apart from the chaos enveloping Claire and her sister. The vibrant colors of the bouquet dulled, the scents that had once sparked joy began to intertwine with a profound sense of loss. "Let's step away from him," her sister urged softly, her hand reaching out to Claire, interlacing their fingers in a familiar gesture that oozed sorrowful nostalgia. "Come with me." With hesitation, Claire followed her sister through the throngs of people, the world around them blurring into a sea of distorted faces and fading laughter. They slipped into a quiet corner, away from prying eyes and lurking truths. "Claire," her sister said, finally releasing a breath she had been holding, "I want to bring you into my world, into the light of what I've built. But that requires confronting the darkest parts of our past. Nina, please," Claire's voice cracked, raw and trembling with unspent emotions. "Don't push me away again. Just what happened? Just tell me." Nina's gaze dropped to the ground, the weight of her past forcing her to swallow hard. "After you left home, everything spiraled. Our family, it fell apart. I tried to reach out, I tried to fix things, but I only made it worse. I was so angry at you for leaving, angry at Mom for letting it happen. You don't know what it's like to watch everything you love unravel. And yet I was left to suffer through the aftermath alone," Claire countered softly, each word a tinge of grief and accusation. "How could you take that choice away from me? How could you think it was okay to ignore me?" Nina's eyes gleamed with unshed tears. "I thought by keeping my distance, I was protecting you. I thought," her voice faltered. "I thought you'd be better off without the burden of our family's failures. Is that what you think of me?" Claire shook her head, incredulous. "That I couldn't handle it? That I didn't want you in my life? No, Claire, I never." But their conversation was interrupted as the man in the suit approached them once more, a predator lurking in the shadows of their vulnerability. "Are you two done with your little private reunion?" His tone dripped with mockery, causing Claire's heart to race. "Because I have information you both desperately need to hear. Get away from us," Claire shouted, feeling a surge of anger and protectiveness rise to the surface. But her sister held her steady, as if reminding her that the chaotic thread of their past needed to be untangled with care. "Tell us," Nina said, calming her sister with a fierce determination that surprised Claire. "What do you know? As I said, it's not just a reunion." The man smirked, adjusting his collar like a showman in a theater. "There was more to your past than you think. Family secrets aren't just scandalous, they are life-altering. Claire, what if I told you that the reason you were separated was much more sinister than you could ever imagine? Just say it." Claire's voice rose, both frightened and furious at the implication that the truth could not only tear them apart but also reveal nightmares buried deep in the corners of their lives. He leaned in close, lowering his voice to a chilling whisper. "You might want to sit down for this. You were never just the blind girl bullied. There's a reason why they went after you, the reason you are who you are today. Your identity is entwined in a legacy that breeds darkness, and it could very well shatter any semblance of peace you thought you had." Time slowed as realization set in, fear wrapping its unyielding grip around Claire's heart. Each word felt like ice running through her veins, leaving her breathless. "What? What do you mean? But the man only smiled, a glint of satisfaction lighting his eyes as he stepped back, leaving them on that precipice of heart-wrenching revelation. Find me if you dare. I'll be waiting. But just know some truths are best left buried. As he walked away, Claire turned to her sister, panic surging within her like a tidal wave. Nina, what does that even mean? What legacy? What darkness? And between them, the fragile threads of hope began to fray as the shadows twisted and danced menacingly around them, leaving no promises unscathed and no answers at hand. Claire took a halting step back, realizing that the path forward was fraught with peril, and together they would have to confront a world that might shatter everything they thought they knew. The weight of the man's words hung in the air, thick and foreboding. Claire's mind raced as she tried to grasp the implications of the vague threat he had left dangling before them. A legacy that breeds darkness, she murmured, casting a glance at Nina, hoping for clarity but finding only confusion mirrored in her sister's wide eyes. Nina's hand tightened around Claire's, as if they could ground each other amidst the encroaching storm. It doesn't make sense, Claire. He's playing mind games. We can't trust anything he says. Can we afford not to? Claire's voice shook, her heart drumming wildly against her ribcage. A tempest of emotions flooded through her: fear, anger, and an unsettling curiosity gnawing at her insides. What if he's right? What if there's more to our family than we ever knew? Then we'll face it together, Nina said fiercely, her gaze firming with resolve. You're not alone in this. You never were and you never will be. Just as Claire opened her mouth to respond, a tug at her sleeve startled her. She turned, startled to see the little girl from earlier, the one with wildflower braids and a bouquet in her tiny hands. Claire felt a rush of warmth run through her. The child's innocent presence was a breath of fresh air amidst the tension. Are you sad? The girl asked, her eyes wide with genuine concern. Claire knelt down, meeting the child's gaze. A little bit, sweetheart. But that's okay. What's your name? Lily, she said, her voice a soft melody that cut through the heaviness surrounding them. You look like a princess when you're sad. But princesses get to be happy too, right? A smile broke through Claire's turmoil, if only for a fleeting moment. Yes, they do. She wanted to believe that. She wanted to believe that happiness was still within reach. Thank you, Lily. The girl nodded earnestly before extending her bouquet toward Claire, the flowers vibrant and full of life. Here. They make me happy. I hope they make you happy too. With trembling hands, Claire accepted the gift, marveling at the beauty of something so simple yet so profound. Just then, as if sensing the shift in the air, she glanced back at Nina, who was watching the exchange with a softened expression. See? Nina whispered, there's still kindness in the world. As they stood, a wave of gratitude washed over Claire, mingling with the dread that loomed in the background. But before she could savor the warmth sparked by Lily's gesture, a sense of foreboding returned, stronger than before. The man's words echoed in her mind, each syllable stripping away the illusion of safety with every heartbeat. Let's get out of here, Claire said, turning to Nina. We need to figure this out, away from here. We can't let him control this narrative. Nina nodded, her determination as fierce as Claire's. They moved through the crowds, weaving past familiar faces that had suddenly become foreign in the chaos of new truths. But as they stepped out into the night, away from the party's artificial lights, an unsettling thought struck Claire like a thunderbolt. What if the darkness mentioned by the man wasn't just about family secrets? What if it extended to something they had both been blissfully unaware of? The air outside felt dense, each breath heavy with unspoken fears. Claire could almost see the shadows gathering just beyond the light, each whisper of the wind a reminder of the secrets waiting to be unearthed. She pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the limited contacts: her mother, a few distant friends, and then a name that stood out like a beacon: David. Claire? Nina's voice broke through her haze. What are you thinking? I need to call him, Claire said, her voice firm. David might have information. He's always had a curious interest in our family history. Maybe he knows more about whatever this darkness is. Are you sure? Nina questioned, worry etched across her face. What if this leads us deeper into trouble? It might, but I can't ignore the chance that we could uncover the truth, Claire replied, her determination unwavering. She pressed the dial button, praying for a connection. Praying for a glimmer of hope. With each ring, a knot of anxiety tightened in Claire's stomach. Finally, she heard the familiar voice on the other line. "Claire? Is everything okay?" "Not really," she admitted, glancing over her shoulder, half afraid the man in the suit would appear from the shadows. "I need to ask you something important, about my family. Can we meet?" A pause followed, heavy with the implications of her request. "Of course." "Where?" She hesitated, the weight of her next words pressing down. "The cafe on 1st and Main." "Soon. Please. On my way. Just tell me what's going on." As Claire hung up, she felt a rush of adrenaline propelling her forward, but beneath that energy lay a well of dread. They might The air in the cafe was a strange mix of warmth and sterility, as the aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the room, momentarily distracting Claire from the chill that crept over her. Nina's hand squeezed her arm, grounding her just as the reality of the man outside settled into the pit of her stomach. With trembling fingers, Claire wrapped her fingers around the floral bouquet, almost as if it could ward off the darkness hovering at the edges of her mind. "Why is he here?" Nina's voice was barely a whisper, each word weighed down with unasked questions. There was an edge to her voice that alluded to an undeniable fear, cementing the realization that the stakes had never been higher. "I don't know," Claire confessed, forcing herself to look away from the stranger. "But we need to stay focused. David will be here soon." She tried to sound confident, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. They chose a small table near the window, where they could keep watch over the streets outside, half expecting the man to melt away into the shadows, but he remained, almost as if he were a sentinel, a harbinger of their past crumbling into the present. Minutes passed, each one stretching by painfully slow. Just as Claire was about to suggest they leave, the bell tinkled above the doorway, and David stepped inside, his presence instantly illuminating the dark corners of Claire's anxiety. He spotted them immediately, his brows knitting together in concern as he rushed over. "Claire." "Nina!" His voice was a blend of warmth and urgency. "What happened?" Claire glanced furtively at the man who still lingered outside, leaning comfortably against the lamppost. "We don't have much time." "I think someone is watching us," she said quietly, her heart racing. "But I need your help more than ever." David's eyes flickered to the window before settling back on Claire, concern deepening as he settled into the seat opposite her. "Okay, tell me everything." As Claire recounted her conversation with the man, she noticed the shifting expressions on David's face: confusion, concern, and finally, an unsettling recognition. The weight of her words seemed to settle in the air like a thick fog, and she struggled to keep steady as anticipation twisted within her. That's troubling." David hesitated, running a hand through his hair. "I've read about this. The family line you come from has a darker reputation than I initially thought." "What do you mean?" Nina's voice broke through, sharp and demanding. "Your family, Claire," he said gently, but urgency seeped into his tone. "There are stories, whispers of betrayal and darkness that go back generations. They say it runs deep in the bloodline." Her chest tightened, words lodged in her throat. The unease she had felt earlier morphed into something more profound. "What else do you know?" "Well, He paused, his gaze drifting to the window, and Claire followed suit. The man was still watching, his smirk now more sinister than before. "There are rumors that some members of your family chose to embrace that darkness rather than fight it off. Some say they are still out there, holding on to something that should have been let go long ago." "Who? What are you talking about?" Claire's voice cracked, the tension threatening to fracture her. "Others," David finally admitted, casting a heavy glance at the man outside. "They believe your family has ties to a secret society. A group that uses their legacy to manipulate power and influence." A cold knot formed in Claire's stomach, the truth crashing like waves against her defenses. "Why didn't I ever know? Why didn't my parents tell me?" "Because it's complicated," David pressed, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Your mother, she's in the thick of it. You have to understand, this isn't just about your family. This could put you in danger, Claire. If he's part of that world, only if they find out we're looking, Nina interjected, her voice shaking but resolute. They won't let us turn back now. The three of them sat in a confounding silence, each grappling with the weight of the revelation. But the air outside shifted, the dingy cafe feeling like a sanctuary as reality blipped and blurred around them. Claire's thoughts spiraled, tethered to the man outside, a man who appeared to hold her family's shadows and secrets, as if they were strands of his own. And just as David was about to offer more insight, the bell above the cafe door jangled, and a wave of tension raced through Claire. Her heart dropped as she turned to see the man in the suit striding in, oozing a confidence that felt predatory. David stiffened, concern etched into his features, but Claire felt something more visceral, an instinct to flee. The man approached their table, that same disconcerting grin stretching across his face. The sisters in the flesh, he crooned, his voice smooth and dangerously inviting. I'd hoped to catch you in a more private setting. Who are you? Claire shot back defiantly, her hands trembling at her sides, even as the warmth of Lily's flowers began to fade. Let's just say I'm someone who knows more about your legacy than you might wish, he said, leaning closer, his eyes glinting with a predatory joy. And perhaps I could help you discover just what that darkness entails. Fear clashed with the need for information, and Claire could feel the weight of choice pressing against her heart. But it wasn't merely a choice about Familino, it was about survival now. Stay away from us, Nina warned, her voice barely steadied. Ah, my dear, he chuckled softly, dismissing her outrage with a wave of his hand. This is just the beginning. Secrets have a way of bringing people together, don't you think? With that, he turned his gaze back to Claire, a look of undeniable satisfaction playing at his lips. You might want to reconsider, sweetheart. Because when the tide comes in, it doesn't matter where you stand, you will drown in it. His words echoed in the cafe, mingling with the chatter of an unsuspecting crowd and deepening the shadows that had already begun to envelop Claire's thoughts. She felt the weight of a new cliff before her, teetering on the edge of secrets, and the haunting shadows that she could no longer ignore. As he sauntered out, Claire exchanged a look with Nina, and Davida shared understanding of battle lines drawn, a sense of inevitable reality crashing upon them. The truth was irretrievable now, and the warmth of Lily's flowers faded further as Claire sensed the unsettling stirrings within their family's legacy, knowing that they had only begun to skim the surface of the darkness yet to rise. The evening felt heavy with unspoken tension as we stepped out of the cafe, my heart pounding in a dissonant rhythm that echoed the chaos still swirling around us. The man's words haunted me, trailing after us like shadows, dark tendrils wrapping around my thoughts. The knowledge that my life was interwoven with a legacy of darkness, a history I never knew I had, threatened to overwhelm me. Claire, we need a plan, David murmured, breaking the weighty silence hanging in the air. His gaze darted over the street, his body tense as if anticipating danger. They won't just let you walk away from this. I nodded, my breath catching in my throat as I glanced at Nina, who looked equally bewildered, her expression a mixture of concern and determination. What do we do? I asked, feeling the weight of uncertainty pressing down on my shoulders. First, we need to understand what we're dealing with, Nina said, her voice steadier than I felt. We have to dig deeper into our family's past, find out what the darkness really is. If it's connected to that man, we need to learn everything we can. A flicker of hope ignited within me. David, you've always had an interest in our family history. Can you help us? I asked. You know where to look, don't you? He nodded, the gears of his mind already whirring. Well, start with the old archives at the town hall. There might still be records that could shed some light on your family's past. But we have to be careful. If there's a group involved, they might be watching. Unease snaked its way through my veins as we began to walk down the street, the chill of the night air wrapping around me like an unwanted cloak. The uncertainty of our situation gnawed at my insides. And if we find something, what then? What if this darkness is more than just a family secret? Nina met my gaze, her expression fierce. Then we face it, Claire. Together. Together, I echoed, though doubts still lingered in my mind. The weight of the unknown pressed against me, but there was power in our unity, a warmth that beckoned against the looming shadows. Suddenly, A loud crash broke through our conversation, pulling our attention toward an alley just ahead. I froze, instincts flaring. Something felt off. Leaning into the ominous atmosphere, I caught sight of the man in the suit again, this time confronting a figure pressed against the alley wall. I stepped closer, curiosity and fear battling within me, only to see the familiar silhouette of the woman I once thought was long gone, a face I scarcely recognized yet felt tethered to. Claire's sister. I glanced at Nina, and my heart dropped. Wait, that's... But before I could finish my thought, the man spun around, his demeanor shifting, his eyes locked onto us, a predator calculating his next move. Curious, are we? His voice dripped with malice, each word sending chills racing down my spine. Stay back! David stepped forward instinctively, guarding Nina and me as the man approached. What do you want? That's none of your business. The man's smirk twisted into something cold and calculating, and the tension in the air became suffocating. But it looks like the sisters have a little reunion planned. Claire! My sister called, her tone urgent but laced with fear. We need to get away from here. Now, but before I could respond, everything seemed to whirl around me, a cacophony of confusion and dread taking hold. I felt anchored in place, rooted by fear and the gravity of our shared past. Leave her alone! I shouted, my desperation competing with my resolve. The man laughed softly, a chilling sound that echoed against the brick walls surrounding us. You really think you can protect her? It doesn't matter what you do, this will all come to light, one way or another. With that, he turned, dismissing us as though we were mere pests in an elaborate game, pretending we posed any real threat. But as he walked away, his words heavy with foreboding, part of me felt the inevitability of what was unfolding. Realization dawned, like the slowly breaking dawn illuminating a dark night. Claire, what if our past has something to do with him? That's what I'm afraid of. The truth resonated in Nina's voice, grounding us as I steadied myself against the tidal wave of emotions churning in my heart. We had only just begun to unfold the layers of our family legacy, but I could feel the haunting shadows echoing through the night. We have to dig deeper, I insisted. Tonight. Right now. Let's get to the town hall, David urged, urgency lighting his features. We moved through the city, adrenaline propelling us forward as the night presented both thrilling and terrifying possibilities. The unease lingered, but now, so did something strong, a fierce desire to uncover the truth and, finally, confront the legacy that no longer felt buried but rather eager to greet us. As we reached the town hall, I could almost hear my heart echoing against the stone walls, a reflection of what was to come. The weight of everything pressed against me, yet amidst the uncertainty, I felt a pulse of determination thrumming within. Together, I whispered, and as my sister nodded, the birth of a profound truth settled over me. This was our chance for forgiveness, for reunion, and perhaps most importantly, for breaking free from the darkness that sought to define us. We stepped into the archives, and the door closed behind us, the world outside fading as our journey toward the truth began in earnest. In the heart of uncertainty, we would find our courage. And in that fragile light, I realized that perhaps the true legacy we would uncover would be stitched together with a powerful resolution, one powerful enough to shatter the darkness awaiting us. Let's get to work, I said, picking up a dusty tome, feeling the pulse of hope against the suffocating dread. Together, we would forge ahead, unearthing not just the secrets of our past but crafting a narrative that would ultimately guide us toward the future, the one where we weren't just defined by shadows, but by the beautiful light that would rise from our choices. Finally, I whispered to the night, we're reclaiming what is ours. We're ready. The words settled in the stillness, a promise shared not just among us but with the universe, as if we were launching ourselves into a new beginning, a remarkable destiny waiting to be born. And as the chapters of our lives interwove in that moment, I knew we would emerge stronger, forever changed by the journey ahead, as a family destined to fight for the light at the end of the darkest path. In this fractal of uncertainty, I felt a spark of fragile hope that illuminated the recesses of my heart, and I vowed never to let it fade. I was ready to walk into the storm for love, for truth, and to find beauty in the darkest places, knowing that together, hand in hand, we could face anything. No matter what comes next, we're family. and family always finds a way. With those words, we embarked on our journey through the shadows and towards the light, a cosmic dance between the weight of history and the heady thrill of what lay ahead, a convergence that would shape all our tomorrows.